All right, welcome to this week's edition of Coach Prep. Coach Don and I are working on Zoom today as we get ready to record this fun episode. Before we get into the topic, which is player-to-player communication, we're going to talk about patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Please become a patron if you can. We've been super excited to add several new patrons here in the last couple of weeks. We definitely need more people to come on board. You've heard me talk about it now for several weeks in a row. There's several things associated with running this podcast that have gotten substantially more expensive. Our expenses keep going up, and unfortunately, our wealth of donors and sponsors has not matched that. We're getting back into that danger zone of, can we afford to keep this hobby going? Coach Don and I love getting together and talking about softball, but we're also getting to that point now. We're at another little stretch here. If things don't start to pick up, we're going to have to start having that hard discussion again about how much longer can we keep doing it. If you love what we're doing, if you like this podcast, please support us. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. So Don, as we talked about in Everything Fast Pitch this week, I spent some time at the ballpark on Saturday, and I didn't really get a chance to watch too many games like in depth. But something that I noticed very, very quickly, just the little bit that I was kind of watching over my shoulder, was how poorly some teams operate when it comes to player communication, whether it's pop-up communication and balls in the infield, pop-up slash fly ball communication, balls between the infielders and outfielders, and then honestly, fly ball communication, balls between two outfielders. Now, teams that I saw were all pretty strong teams. They all looked pretty good. And I know it's early in the season for a lot of teams. A lot of them have not had tons and tons of practices. But you can clearly see the difference between those teams that have worked super hard on making sure that they've got priorities, knowing whose job is what, who has override from position to position. And they do a great job. And every time the ball gets hit in the air, somebody's the right person to make the play, and they make it every time. And then other teams, every time that ball gets hit in the air, it's like a clown car. Everybody's jumping out at the last second. Nobody knows for sure what's going on. Nobody knows whose job it is. And nobody has a way of, kind of taking control of the situation and keeping, a bad situation from getting worse. So wanted us to kind of talk about that a little bit today for Coach Prep, because I think it's something that all teams need to spend more time working on. And unfortunately, seems like some are not doing a very good job.
Yeah, Tori, that's one of those deals where it's a big part of injury prevention too, and keeping the kids safe. We need to make sure that they have a method to communicate with one another when the ball is popped up in the infield or between infield and outfield or anywhere on the field for that matter. I've just seen too many collisions, too many, because the kids are excited and they're athletic enough that they can do some amazing things, but if we have collisions or we have miscommunication, that's when the injuries occur. And that just breaks my heart because, we do all this stuff for them to get out there and participate. And if they're hurt, can't be doing that. So taking the time at practice to develop some type of communication or a safety procedures, we could call them, for balls that are between or borderline between positions, I think is a big deal, and it's worth us taking that extra time. We can skip a few ground balls to make sure that we don't bang heads when we're trying to get that pop up, but have something in place intact and make it happen, practice it often so that they're fresh and well versed at it. But let's make sure that that's a priority for sure.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things you touched on it, Don, because the quote unquote pop up slash fly ball is something that seems like it's the play that should always be made. I think sometimes as coaches, we take for granted that our kids are always going to make it. And so we don't spend enough time working on the guidelines, the rules of engagement, so to speak, of how to handle those situations. So, and again, coaches, it's up to you to come up with whatever system you want to use. Coach Don and I have talked about this in the past. For mine, if I was coaching a team right now, we would still use a very simple system where one player says mine, and then the corresponding player says go. But from that foundation of that's our basic communication, and here's why we always use that. Mine is very clear. It means I'm catching this ball. It means there's no question about it. I know for sure I'm making this play. Go, go, go for the corresponding players is very comforting for the player who's calling mine, because even though they start to know that people are getting close, that somebody could be potentially invading their space, because they're communicating that you're going to go catch the ball, that they don't have to worry about you crashing into them. The team that I watched on Saturday that was really struggling, it wasn't that the players weren't skilled enough or athletic enough or whatever to get to the ball. It's when they got to the ball, they were both so afraid that the train wreck was coming, they pulled up short, that they stopped going after it at the last possible second. So come up with a communication tool, whether it's mine, go, or whatever it is, and then set your parameters. So if the third baseman calls the ball, who does she have priority over? For us, it was the pitcher or the catcher. If the first baseman calls it, who does she have priority over? The pitcher or the catcher? Who does the second baseman and shortstop have priority over? The first baseman, third baseman, pitcher, and catcher. And so on and so forth on down the line, however you want to set it up for who you think is going to be in the best position most consistently to make those plays. And then, as Don said, practice the heck out of it so that they have comfort and confidence in it, so that we don't have the I thought you were going to catch it. You said I got it. I said I got it. Somebody else said I got it. All three of us I got it. Added up to nobody caught it. And so I think it's important, whatever your system is, to make sure that you teach it, you practice it, you use it, and then you reinforce it, even to the point of, if like in my world, if the shortstop has priority over the third baseman, if the third baseman starts off with mine, shortstop overrules her, the third baseman should get the heck out of the way and let the shortstop catch it, because she knows the shortstop has priority. So if the third baseman doesn't give up on it and catches it and creates doubt in the shortstop's mind, then I'm correcting the third baseman who caught it for not doing the right thing, because the way our system was set up, even though she thought it was her ball at first, when the shortstop called it, that made it the shortstop's ball, and now she needs to get out of the way and let the shortstop catch it. And so sometimes I think you have to stick to your guns and make sure that even if the play gets made, if the right person isn't catching it according to what your system is, if that means a couple of harsh words, or pull you aside and say, hey, great that you caught it, but you could screw us up next time, because now she won't go after it and you might not be able to catch the next one. So it's something I think we really need to work on more. And again, I think sometimes with the limited amount of practice time that we have, I think that it can be challenging. But we used to work on this stuff indoors. We would work on communication in the hallways and in the racquetball rooms and in the wrestling room and in the gymnasium, because it was in some ways even a better preparation for us, because the ball wasn't in the air for very long. So the communication had to happen quicker, and we had to sort stuff out faster, because we didn't have the ball hanging in the air for 3 or 4 seconds for people to mill around and ultimately catch the ball. So pop-up communication, fly ball communication, player-to-player communication, it needs a lot more work. We need to really invest more time in it.
Yeah, Tori, I think it's much worth their while for sure. And I would rather a ball hit the ground because of bad communication than for us to have these collisions. And there's so many balls that go up in the air that multiple people could catch them. And it just comes down to being able to do it safely and effectively. And that's just through having that method or practice time to make it happen on a game day is just something we've got to make happen for sure. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, to me, these kinds of plays, when they don't get made, it's like the absolute kiss of death to a team. Your pitcher makes a great pitch. She gets a pop-up in the infield. The inning should be over. She should, be out of this jam. But then because of some lack of communication or miscommunication, that pop-up ends up hitting the ground. And all of a sudden the pitcher's mad, the pitcher's dad is mad, the coach is mad, the rest of the team is mad. And those kinds of things can spiral out of control really, really quickly. All of a sudden we go from we should be in the dugout and no damage done to we gave up 2 or 3 runs and a whole lot of finger pointing, and people are frustrated and angry. So let's just get ahead of it now, practice it more. Again, coaches, you can come up with whatever system you want. It doesn't matter what your code is, doesn't matter how you're saying, what you're saying, whatever it is, but all the players on the field for your team have to be on the same page, and they have to have practiced it enough that they have confidence that it's going to work. So that's going to wrap up this week's Coach Prep. Please make sure you send us ideas, questions, topics that you want us to talk about. Again, to everythingfastpitch@gmail.com or fastpitchprep@gmail.com. Either email address will work. Please go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Become a patron. Coach Don and I really do appreciate the support of the patrons that we have. but there's no nice way to say it. We need some more people to come on board. So if you see value in what we're doing and you want to be able to keep the podcast alive, please make sure you come on board and become a patron again. Patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. So for Coach Don McKinley and our producer, Stan Lewis, this is Coach Torrey saying thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.